Welcome to EPG Pathshala program. Myself, Meenal Katarnikar, Associate Professor from the Department of Philosophy, University of Mumbai. In this session, we are going to discuss Prasanga as a kind of argument and as a philosophical method propounded by the Buddhist logician Nagarjuna. In classical India, the philosophers usually adopt a common pattern of reasoning, literally Vadavidhi. They would first describe their opponent's viewpoint. The opponent's position is technically called Purva Paksha. After the necessary exposition, the Purva Paksha is refuted by rigorous argumentation. The refutation is called Khandana. Once the opponent's position is refuted, the proponents advance their own position, which is called Uttara Paksha or Siddhanta. Nagarjuna, the 2nd century Buddhist logician, is said to be the founder of Madhyamika school of Buddhism. He also adopts the same pattern of reasoning but with a significant difference. The difference essentially lies in his disinclination to propose any fresh position, and hence the last component of the Vadavidhi, namely Siddhanta, is in a sense not intended. Nagarjuna usually concludes every argument with the remark that the opponent's position bristles with contradiction and is therefore untenable. Since he does not intend to establish any thesis and sets out to show that the entire domain of conceptualization is bound to involve incoherent features, he is pejoratively called Vaitandika. However, the method that he has propounded is a sort of negative argumentation, and it is the subject matter of our present session. So in this session we are going to study what is Prasanga method propounded by Nagarjuna. Prasanga is often recognized as a negative argument since it seeks to demonstrate problems in negative terms inherent in a viewpoint, that is drishti. It is a kind of hypothetical or suppositional reasoning. In this method, as a rule, the premises are merely supposed, not committed to for the purpose. So it starts with maybe denying something and ends at showing that there is a contradiction committed, and then leads to the conclusion that no position is tenable. The term Prasanga is interpreted in different ways. First meaning of the term Prasanga is derived from the root sanya by addition of the prefix pra and the suffix gang. The root sang means to attach, to join, to connect, to adhere, to stick, etc. Thus the etymology of the term Prasanga suggests that it is a relational reasoning which points out the relational nature of the concepts, in that one concept is invariably linked to another concept for its understanding. The word Prasanga also means calamity or undesirable consequence. In the Prasanga type of argument, one shows how the given viewpoint leads or forces us to accept an undesirable situation. In Tarkabhasha, Mokshakar Gupta defines Prasanga as a hypothetical negative reasoning which attempts to bring out an absurd, undesirable conclusion on the basis of a universal statement already established by an evidence. This deviation is called Prasanganumana, one of the types of inference as advocated by the Buddhists. The Madhyamika Buddhists use prasanga as a philosophical method rather than a type of anumana. The method is used invariably for refuting the position of Swabhavavada, and it is used universally, that is, with respect to all types of positions and not locally or selectively. Prasanga as a method of refutation can be understood in comparison to the method of indirect proof, which involves reductio ad absurdum. The students of symbolic logic may be familiar with the explanation of the method of indirect proof given by Copy. As it says, the method of indirect proof, often called the method of proof by reductio ad absurdum, is familiar to all who have studied elementary geometry. In deriving his theorems, Euclid often begins by assuming the opposite of what he wants to prove. If that assumption leads to contradiction or reduces to an absurdity, then that assumption must be false, and so its negation, the theorem to be proved, must be true. The above description of indirect proof shows us that in the proof by reductio ad absurdum, what is to be proved is provisionally negated, and then it is shown that this assumption leads to a contradiction. The Madhyamika Buddhists use a similar technique for establishing shunyata. They assume provisionally that the claims of opponents of shunyata, that is, those of Swabhavavadins, that is, the believers of an essential nature of everything, are true, and then show how this assumption leads to some undesirable conclusions. These conclusions may not involve logical contradictions, but they are at least unacceptable to the opponents. This is the crux of the Prasanga method elaborated by Nagarjuna. Prasanga method is used in variation by the Nayayikas also. They have introduced a concept of tarka, which has the form of prasanga, but it was used as an aid for a proof. For example, while proving the existence of fire on the hill, one can think in the following way. Supposing that there is no fire on the hill, then smoke, being the effect of fire, would not be there. But it is a fact that there is smoke. Thus, the non-existence of fire on the hill is an unacceptable situation. This is the Nyaya way of looking at Prasanga method. But when we turn to the Prasanga type of argument used by the Madhyamika Buddhists as a philosophical method, we can see the major difference between the Nyaya view and the Buddhist view. In the Nyaya view, Prasanga is used only as the aid, while in Buddhists, the Prasanga is used as a major philosophical method. In the latter thinkers in the Buddhist tradition, especially in the Madhyamika tradition, there are two variations of using the Prasanga method. One is Prasangikas and the others are Swatantrikas. These are the two prominent subschools in the Madhyamika tradition. Prasangika, led by Buddha Palita, and Swatantrika, led by Bhava Viveka, respectively. This schism between the Prasangikas and the Swatantrikas is based on the differences in the method of argumentation. The Prasangika school argues that the philosophical activity of the Madhyamika is basically refutative or negative, and it is not to positively affirm any viewpoint, since all viewpoints necessarily involve undesired implications. As against this, the Swatantrika school advocates that one's viewpoint must be fortified with logical reasoning corroborated by empirical evidence. The main contention of the Madhyamikas is that everything is Shunya. By the term Shunya, what is meant is Nisvabhava, that is, devoid of an essential nature. The question before the Madhyamikas was, what could be the proper method of establishing essencelessness of all things? There was difference of opinion within the Buddhist tradition on this issue, which seems to be responsible for the emergence of two prominent subschools in the Madhyamika Buddhist tradition. Chandrakirti, who has written a well-known commentary on Nagarjuna's Mula Madhyamika Karika, brings out the controversy between the two schools in a very important way. The context is Nagarjuna's examination of causal conditions, Pratyaya Pariksha. Nagarjuna presents four alternatives with regard to origination and refutes the four arguments. The four alternatives are as follows. 1. Things are caused by themselves. Things are caused by something other than themselves. Things are caused by both, and things are caused by nothing. While commenting on the above verse of Nagarjuna, Chandrakirti says that self-causation is meaningless because there is no purpose in the arising of the things which are already existent. If things are said to have originated from something other than themselves, then anything would have arisen from anything else. For example, darkness would arise from the light, which makes the principle of causation chaotic. If things are said to originate partially from themselves and partially from others, this will invite the difficulty of the earlier two. The last one simply goes against our experience, which suggests that things are conditioned by the factors necessarily preceding their origination. Thus, the third and fourth are also obvious cases of contradiction. Chandrakirti, in his explanation, refers to the view of Buddha Palita and Bhava Viveka. Buddha Palita explains the argument in the Prasangika way on the position that things are caused by themselves. He says, things do not arise from themselves because their origination will be futile, and also because there is fault of undesirable consequence. That is because there is no reason why things which exist by themselves should be originated again. Even if an existing thing is originated again, then it will never cease to be originated. On this, the Swatantrikas, probably represented by Bhava Viveka, say this is not justified because in this argument probans and instance are not stated, and also the objections of the opponents are not removed. And because this is the statement of unacceptable implications, the present content will be denied, and opposite probandum and its characteristics will be expressed. In this way, a contrary doctrine will be established, namely, things are originated from things other than themselves because their origination is meaningful and the origination is followed by cessation. The method of prasanga as applied by Nagarjuna gives rise to some serious logical issues. Let us discuss these issues one by one. The first issue is the issue of the nature of negation. The question can be put in different words as a question about Nagarjuna's negation. When Nagarjuna says that he has no thesis to state, can it be said that he is making truth functional negation of a proposition is itself a proposition? But consider the expression, I am not making any proposition. Is it itself a proposition? It cannot be a proposition without being paradoxical. The paradox can be resolved if we regard the negation in the expression non-truth functional and the expression itself is regarded as a pseudo-proposition. A performative negation is different from a truth functional negation in that by performatively negating a statement, one is not making another statement but is only expressing a negative attitude towards the statement. So, from the position of Nagarjuna, there arises a serious question about the nature of negation. Another issue is the issue of the laws of thought. A question can be raised whether prasangika madhyamika, by applying the method of prasanga, are not violating the laws of logic. Here, by the laws of logic, we mean the laws like that of non-contradiction and excluded middle, which are traditionally called the laws of thought. The question arises because the prasangika madhyamikas apply this method to all possible alternative positions. Here the question is this: suppose on a certain issue we are given n number of alternatives which are mutually exclusive and collectively exhaustive. Can one deny all alternatives under consideration? Nagarjuna is doing precisely this. The negation of all possible alternatives amounts to violation of the law of excluded middle. Nagarjuna denies the alternative that things are eternal, but then does he accept the other alternative, namely non-existence of things? Nagarjuna not only denies bhava but also abhava. This leads us to a dilemma according to which things are neither existent nor non-existent. Now the question is, can Nagarjuna deny both existence and non-existence of things without transgressing the laws of logic? It seems that the denial would lead to the transgression of the laws of logic, such as excluded middle and double negation. Nagarjuna's prasanga method can be traced back to Vibhajyavada in pre-canonical times. This was a method of answering different types of questions. And as history tells us, there are types of questions which are known to be sthapaniya, or the questions which are to be put aside. This method was applied by the Buddha to treat the metaphysical questions, where he forcefully said that the metaphysical questions should be put aside. Now Nagarjuna is using the same technique for showing that the opponents are holding some fallacious positions. The statements that are made by the opponents are not logical and therefore they have to be kept aside. That is how the method of Chatushkoti and the Prasanga method is used by Nagarjuna. As we have seen earlier, Nagarjuna denies all the alternatives by showing that some illogic is committed by them. The contemporaries of the Buddhists, the Jaina logicians, also were influenced by the Vibhajya method, but they interpreted this method in the Anekanta manner. They considered all the alternatives to be the partial alternatives and they accepted all. That is how we have Jaina logic which is inclusivistic logic, while we have Nagarjuna logic, which is exclusivistic logic. Nagarjuna's criticism of language and thought involves two major points. 1. Language and thought consist of vikalpas, that is, mental constructs. These mental constructs purportedly represent a fixed and essential feature. They are imposed on reality as identifying features, swabhavas of the elements of reality. Language thus plays an essentializing role which distorts the true nature of reality. Secondly, the units of language and thought appear to have a fixed and essential feature, but being mental constructs, they themselves are not closed but open-ended, not absolute or essential but relative. The relative nature of the core concepts we use while talking or thinking about the world gives rise to paradoxes. Nagarjuna, in this way, tries to draw our attention to the error called essentialism, that is Swabhavavada, which is inherent in our conventional and also philosophical practice of language and thought. Non-essentiality, Niswabhavata or Shunyata, thus characterizes the true nature of reality, Paramarthata. Nagarjuna's argumentative exercise, therefore, cannot be said to prove the Shunyata, the nature of things, in the conventional sense of the word proof. It only tries to help us in developing an insight into the Shunyata nature of things. Shunyata ultimately is not supposed to be a matter of argument and proof, but of an ineffable meditative insight. And it seems that by Prasanga method, Nagarjuna is showing to us the futility of all the logical and linguistic arguments and leading us to the state of Shunyata. It is not the case that the inclusivistic logic does not face any problems. The problem of relativism is the major problem that is faced by inclusivistic logic. But the problems which are faced by the exclusivistic logic of Nagarjuna are more serious. The problems are not serious only for the Prasanga method of Nagarjuna. As we will see, this method has itself posed some very serious problems for the traditional logical system. Nagarjuna's refutation and global use of the Prasanga method challenges the basic assumptions of classical two-valued logic. It is quite plausible to argue that his criticism of logic is a part of his criticism of language as a whole, which characterizes the conventional truth, that is Loka Samvrutti Satya. Nagarjuna is critical not only about language but also about thought. According to him, language and thought give us only Samvrutti Satya, that is the conventional truth, which hides and distorts the ultimate truth. If one has to obtain the ultimate truth, one has to forsake both language and thought. And that could be the major motivation behind the application of Prasanga method. Many interpretations are possible, but it would be ideal if we refer to the original write-up written by Dr. Anil Kumar Tiwari, and in addition to that, it would be ideal if we refer to the sources and references which are mentioned at the end of this lesson. Thank you.